On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, powered by BetUS and brought to you from our friends at William Mattar Law Offices, we are joined by senior writer with The Athletic, Nick Baumgardner. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia Worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to Cover One Buffalo podcast. You were joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I'm not okay. Still, has not been a great week, Greg. We were talking about this a little offline. We've had a lot of victory Mondays and Tuesdays and like an entry into the show week where like things are just good. I'm giggling. I'm sending memes. And I had none of that right now. Luckily, it's Christmas time, so I still have joy in my life. And if it wasn't for Christmas and Christmas movies, there would not be much sunshine and joy in the Quinn household this week.
Yeah, we talked about it pre-show, like the prep process and going through some of the different pieces is much easier when it's a victory. But there are some things that are actually a little easier to move past an ugly loss because I don't want to watch it a third or fourth time. For anyone who is listening tonight, we are recording this ahead of time. It's Tuesday night right now. You're watching this on Wednesday night, so apologies for our awesome comments in the chat and super chats. We appreciate you guys very, very much. Apologies,
miss you guys.
Able to bring them up during the show. I usually try to log on and say hi while the show is going. But I am here on location. I am going live from Atlanta while I travel around in my travelings. But I think it was healthy for me to get ready to move on. And we're going to have Nick on here to talk about this Lions game. That's been one that is a lot of people are really excited about. But I think there's some perspective we'll talk about later in the show about how excited so many other fans were to watch that game on Sunday. And that we're so spoiled that like a 2-point loss that had a blocked punt back for a touchdown feels so deflating and devastating when, they scored 42 points. It was an awesome performance by half the team. At least half the team were awesome. And it's just, our bar is so high for this team that it's interesting to see how deflating that kind of game is when, in the grand scheme of things, an NFC opponent, an awesome performance by the offense, an all-world performance by Josh Allen. Our life's still not too bad.
Yeah, it would have been a lot cooler coming off that kind of loss and the way they lost and the feeling that they lost and the discourse associated to the loss if you weren't playing the Lions next. Like digging into the show prep didn't make me feel better. Usually it's like, okay, I see these I see how to attack this team. I see how this stuff. And all actually this has done is stressed me out more this week. Yeah. So not great. Not doing great.
Yeah. Shouts to our guy, Joe Marino, who described them as the Rams, but better. Yeah. Like if the Rams were better, they would be the Lions. So without further ado, let's bring on our guy, Nick Baumgardner, first appearance on the show. Nick, we appreciate you giving us some time tonight.
Thanks, fellas. What's going on?
You heard it.
I like that Rams, but better. That's a really good comparison, by the way. That's
I mean, there's so many similarities. And we talked about it. There was, we'll get into all the details. I'm petrified of the run game. You guys have a two-headed monster. Kyron Williams is really good. I don't know that he's individually as good as either of your running backs.
Right.
But there's a difference. You guys have a death by 1,000 paper cuts passing offense versus like, hey, we're going to throw it to these two guys. We don't care if we're going to throw it to these two guys. They're bigger and more physical and just all-pro receivers.
And we're going to line them up next to each other.
Good luck. Yeah, we're going to line them up next to each other and have you figure that out. So there's going to be some differences in the game this week. But tell us just a little bit, we talked pre-show. There's so many similarities with these fan bases. Super loyal fan bases for a long time through long drought years, clinging to individual historical guys that were like the only thing you had to cling to without team success. Like we know so much about that kind of fanhood. What is it like right now where, rightfully you guys are the best team in the NFL?
I know.
A fan like the Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFL. Like how that turns out is what it is. They are the best team in the NFL. How is the fan base handling that?
It's wild. It's wild. I think this is the first year of this run because, it's been a buildup to this. Last year, they were very good too. And people were pinching themselves like, what's going on? Is this real? And all offseason, we kind of told them like, hey, this is going to be even better now this season, probably. Right. And I think now they're starting to understand it. And there'll probably be some nervousness come playoff time, but it is a wild scene. It has been like a party all year. They had the draft obviously here in the spring, and that was like almost like the unofficial kickoff, right, to the season. That was one of the biggest.
The Jared Goff chance taking over the draft.
Playoff games last year into that, and then to everything this year has been almost like one of those, there's so many stories of people that, and you guys know the same thing with, legacies of Bills fans over the years, right? Your families and all this. And there's so many people here, throughout the state, be it in Detroit, but all the way into like the upper part of the state, everywhere else in the state that grew up with all this, that it's like, if you stuck with the Lions, and a lot of people did, that's the craziest part. And that's probably the best part about Detroit sports is a lot of people did. There's not a lot. There was some that left and went to a lot of Bills fans around here, a lot of Packers fans around here, but it's still mostly this dormant group that was just waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's finally happened. And it's just something that we always growing up, we always used to talk about as kids. Like, what if they ever are good, and they are, and it's like, it's pretty cool. Yeah. Been great.
I won't lie. There was years before Terry Pagula bought the Bills where I had to have like serious discussions in my own head of like, what happens if somebody moves the Bills somewhere like not Toronto or like I can't root for them. And I kind of was like, I'll probably go to the Lions. Like it was like the similar enough right there. Same type of frame. I don't want to jump on a winner right away. Right. Like I want to jump on a team where I could ride it in with them. So I'm happy for you guys there. We just said, right. The Rams are like the Lions are like the Rams, but better. I want to go back to that for a second because we talked about it last week with the Rams guy. And I want to talk about it with you this week. That trade for Stafford.
Oh man.
Goff. Maybe one of the best balanced trades for two franchises that I can think of in the history of the NFL. Can you talk about like that outside of Dan Campbell coming in and changing the culture, what that spurred for your franchise and how it felt at the time? Because I know we had a guy here that worked for us who had Matt Stafford stuff all over his house, and he was heartbroken watching happy for Stafford to get a title, but heartbroken to see him do it somewhere else. But that kind of pain has gone.
Yes, it was we do look at it here now more or less as I always talk to people, like it's probably one of the best two-way trades in the history of the NFL and in the history of like major sports, to be quite honest. I mean, it really worked out for both teams almost perfectly for what they needed. However, that's not, I won't lie. We talked about that being possible, like, here at the Athletic. Like I remember talking with Jordan Rodriguez, who covers the Rams back then, and she was one of the and Chris Burke, who I work with still at the Lions, and Jordan was always like, Jared is better than people give him credit for. He just needs, a new home. And to her credit, she was right about that. So it took a little bit of time, but eventually it sort of balanced out. And then you just saw everything click for Stafford. People were happy about that. And then it comes full circle, right? He comes back here last year and they beat him, and it becomes this like coronation for Jared Goff. And it has been this very cool thing to see. Almost like two ships passing in the night, but two guys that were like on different paths at different times in their careers that needed that change. There was like a gutsiness from Holmes and Campbell to do that because it wasn't a given. I don't think people remember this. It wasn't a given that the Lions were going to do that. That was very early on in Sheila Ford's sort of time with the team. And back in the day, they wouldn't have done that. How about that? Stafford went to them and asked, "Can I be traded?" Back in the day, the old man would have dug his heels in and said, "Absolutely not. You are going to be here," and he would have been miserable and everything else. They did it, and it worked out for everybody. It's one of the better trades that we've seen around here for sure. Yeah. Very rare, yeah.
Oh, Greg, you're muted, buddy.
Oh, yes.
So now that we've gone past the niceties of how fun it is to be a Lions fan, I want to get into the terrifying part of this matchup. I'm just going to give people a early tidbit here. Bet the over. It's just take whatever the point. It's a big one.
It's 54 and a half.
54 and
Wow.
Bet the over. Bet the over. As we go through here, it has certainly been not dissimilar to the Bills' experience here, certainly last week. The Lions have now seen, not for talent, but for health, that just a huge disparity on the two sides of the ball. So my matchup is defense tonight. And you go in, and there's so many guys that we obviously do a lot of draft work. So love the different people. We never had a chance at a guy like Hutchinson, but his insane motor is just so fun to watch. And he was on kind of a record pace for pressure.
Crazy. Yeah, it was crazy.
I heard a tidbit that maybe there's an outside glimmer of hope.
He's
for
targeted the Super Bowl if they get there, is his hopeful. So you never know with Aiden.
Okay.
He's a freak.
But now you start go down there and okay. So obviously there's no replacing a guy like him, but you do go out and get Zadarius Smith, and there's still a lot of other talent there. And now all of a sudden you start to see more layers of injuries. And now even guys like Aleem McNeil, who we loved, our guy David Tilton, was just over the moon for him, and was heartbroken when we didn't get him in the draft.
So good.
Now you have him dinged on Thursday, and then a guy that maybe isn't the household name of some of the flashy guys, but the green dot, the leader on the defense, and Alex Anzalone. How are you concerned you're getting to a tipping point where, like, hey, at some point here, like the dam's going to bust? Like, where, before we get into any specifics here, where is the head at, your guys' head at, of like, hey, come on, can we catch a break here?
Yeah, and that's really where this is at. Last week I thought was going to be the one where, if it was going to happen, it was going to be this week. It was really this 2-week stretch, and last week was the most banged up they've been all year. They're going to be healthier this week. I think Aleem McNeil, they said either Monday or Tuesday that he was progressing, at least, and he's in concussion protocol, and things were going okay there. So they were
10 days
hopeful
certainly
on him.
helps.
And they get the mini bye there too, and that was part of their issue. They had the 3 games in 11 days, and it added up, and guys were just, all the little things. I think guys were cramping. It was just all sorts of problems. So I think they'll be better off, than they were. However, it's still a big issue. You looked out there on the last one on Thursday, and it was like the guys that were leading the charge there defensively are guys that were not here, 6 weeks ago or a month ago, right? Like Zadarius Smith is like a leader out there. He's been here a month. I mean, like one of those type of things. So, but the one thing that's benefited them is I keep saying this, they've got, with Anzalone getting hurt, Derek Barnes also got hurt. So they've had to add at linebacker. And, you guys know this, there's always a ton of really good linebackers just sitting around. They picked up David Long, who's been a really nice player for them. The dude
Quan
from Denver. Yeah, Quan has been here. Last week he played well for him too. Jamal Adams has been in here playing a little bit of linebacker for him. So they've done okay, like piecing things together and getting guys in here that play with the same effort. But it's definitely this is a different challenge here now with Buffalo, because if anybody else gets hurt, and they're already thinned out. So it's like, if anybody else gets hurt or Aleem can't go, then it's really, you just got to shoot out. That's got to be what it is. It's kind of what the Green Bay game was too.
So you talk about the Bills had this at linebacker last year going into the playoffs, where it wasn't just that you lost Milano and then you lost Bernard and then you lost Terrell Dodson, and then all of a sudden we have AJ Klein, who was called literally to cancel family vacation to come be on the practice squad, was now 100% of snaps chasing Travis Kelce down the field in the playoff game. So as fans see it, it's not the injury, it's not like the number, it's when you get the clusters at a certain position. So now all of a sudden you already have Hutchinson out, now Onwuzurike and Josh Pascal and DJ Reader and Aleem McNeil. Where is that of the testing the depth of that defensive line? Because those are a lot of names we really, really like. McNeil and Reader is a stud combo inside if they're healthy. Onwuzurike is great on a rotational basis. Probably not a guy you want 60-70% of stats, but is super impactful when he's there. Pascal the same way in that rotational base. How is this now testing that defensive line that had a really nice depth and a lot of horses to go at him, and now you're pushing guys into maybe roles they weren't previously?
Yeah, it's really stretched what they can do against the run and what they're like on early downs. The solution from Aaron Glenn has just been to pressure more, which in some ways is a little surprising, but isn't, because that's kind of what he does. Like when they're down a bunch of guys up front, I feel like his thing is, okay, we still have the safeties, right? They still have Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, which they love those guys. Carlton Davis, they love him. So they still have confidence in the back end. They like Terran Arnold more than the numbers bear out. I think he played pretty well last week too. So I think that's sort of we'll take our chances in man and see what happens, because it's tough for quarterbacks, right, sometimes, and receivers to deal with that all game long with guys that are used to it, and then just bring the house and see what happens. That's tough to do. Green Bay, I thought did a terrific job. LaFleur is one of the better, play callers in the game of balancing that. But even he got caught a few times, I thought, in like, hey, we can run the ball against these guys, but also we don't want to ignore, everything either. So it's you can run the ball against this team right now. It's just a matter of, do you want to be willing to dedicate yourself to it, I feel like. But it's definitely there, because they're thin up the middle right now. It's no question about it.
And obviously the game script comes into play. I'll let Aaron touch on the offense, but when you can get a lead and you can make your opponent one-dimensional, it makes it easier to do those things. So
absolutely.
I saved the best for last year. Aaron and I are both big fans of high-end safety play. We love, Javon Howland. We love Budda Baker. We love, we've had a lot of really fun ones this year. I don't know that anybody's playing at the level Brian Branch is right now. Like it's literally bringing back like those, not being sacrilegious here, but like it's bringing up like Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu and, just names of guys who like have that preternatural. How is he always in the right spot over and over? And like he always sees things like a split second before everybody else. It's crazy to see. Like, obviously there were a lot of draft folks going nuts of how he was in the second round as it was. How fun has it been watching this dude?
Amazing.
Don't sleep on Kirby Joseph. That combo is a cheat code. Yeah,
it is.
It's crazy. How fun has it been to see this grow into what it is?
It has been so cool because, like you said, Kirby Joseph's also a lot of fun too, and an underrated dude with really good ball skills. But Branch is like a Rolls Royce, and you said it. Like I do all draft stuff more or less at my day job here at the Athletic, along with Lion stuff with Colton. But so I work all the time with Dane Brugler. I remember we talked so much about him that year, and it was like, dude, this guy could go top 15 and it would be justified. It would be, it was just if somebody had the balls to do it. And then the further he falls, and you're like, oh my God, like how is he still sitting there? And then I'm telling you, the day he came in, the first time they got him out there with pads and had him run around, it was like it is now. I mean, he's one of the most steady-handed, nothing phases him. Like, we've seen him get fined for some of those big hits. It hasn't slowed him down at all. Like, he missed a bunch of tackles, I feel like it was in the first game, and then went to Campbell like the next day and was like, I will never miss any of those tackles ever again, with like a dead serious face. And Campbell was like, okay, man, we're fine. And he hasn't, like he's just I think Saban raved about him back then. Like, he was one of the few guys that could play as a freshman for Saban, as a safety, and Saban trusted him. He just is a football player, like instinctually and predatory. Like you said, the Polamalu comp is my favorite, I feel like, for him. Because it's all over the field and you don't really know where it's coming from. He's not as big maybe, but he plays as big, just reckless type of player in the best way possible. Really fun player.
It's those, reckless is a great word because when you're just a casual fan watching, it looks reckless. It looks like,
exactly.
Why is he going full speed to that? Oh my God, he knew the ball.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Like it's crazy. You see, it looks reckless, but it's because he knows what he's doing and he sees where it's going.
It's also unfair because it's what everyone in Bill's Mafia wants Damar Hamlin to do, and he's just not that guy. Like
a lot of guys aren't.
Why doesn't he do that? Right? Like, not a lot of guys do. Before we get into the offensive side, I want to give you my hot take and see what you think on this with the Lions coaching staff here, because a lot of the buzz is around Ben Johnson being a head coach of maybe the Chicago Bears or something like that. My hot take: I think Aaron Glenn's the guy to get. If you're
you know what? I agree with your hot take. I like that. I do, because I think Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell are the closest of the two. It's culture.
It's culture. Yes. And Aaron Glenn has done more with less.
Absolutely has. Every year they've been here, he's done more with less, including right now.
So, and develop some of these guys. So that's my hot
for a while.
take.
I agree. Good call.
Maybe it's not that hot.
A lukewarm take, we'll say. How about that?
All right. I like it. I like that you confirmed it for me. That makes me feel good. All right, now we have to do this. We have to get into this offense. I like normally I go through all the things, and we'll go through some of them on the layers. But what I try to do when we go into these shows is find how, as an offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills, would I attack this, or the defensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills, how would I stop and attack this team? And you got to help me here. I can't find anything because similar to what the Bills saw in the Rams in the second half. I think they actually did a good job adjusting to the run, and they got into some single high looks, and then the Rams killed them. And you guys can do that too. I just don't know that it's a bit of a rock, paper, scissors, but you seem to have the answer for everything. Can you help me in finding a way, like what has been successful in the teams that have kept them under 30? Can you start there?
Well, I think that some of it has been, if you are really good over the ball, and if you do enough to take away some of that stuff right over the ball to at least get them nervous about it, which is hard to do. The only team that has done it this year is Tampa, and they had Vea, and I think a lot of that, when I went back and looked at that game, was the Lions saying to themselves, we don't want to mess with him. We'll just go away from it and not even bother. And they ended up costing themselves. They haven't done that yet again, because no one's taken it away from them, because that's the difficult, if you can stop Ragnow and Zeitler and those guys inside, then you give yourself a chance to force them to do other things, which slows them down and puts them into more of those third and like 8 or 9s, which is what they can't, that's still an issue. Goff is better against pressure than he was when he got here, but it's still his weak spot. If you can get him into a 3rd and 7 or more, number one, they're probably going to run it on 3rd and 7 or more, depending on where they're on the field, right? Because that's also a thing that was the other thing I was going to say. You have to tackle when you play them. Like, I thought Green Bay did one of the best jobs of anybody I've seen play the Lions all year of tackling and making sure that if you have them in a spot, to make sure that, hey, we're not going to give them a 4th and 3. We're going to make sure that's 4th and 6. So they have to, really think about it. That's the biggest kind of thing with the Lions, is you just can't give them any free anything ever, or they will eat you alive with it, with that front, because and then, like we said, you get the ball back to them and you never get it back. And that's kind of the problem.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, write that down. We should get Vita Vea.
Yes,
get one of those.
That is an outstanding
idea. Prime Sue, get him.
That's it. That's all we need. That's all we need.
Dial Daquan Jones's clock back a year and a half.
Right. That'd be fine.
All.
Yeah.
So speaking of the line, you got a status on Taylor Decker? Is he maybe coming back for this one? I know there's some questionable for the last one, and you've had some rest here. Where's that looking?
It sounded like they were at least inching maybe back toward that. I think that was at least the idea when he missed the last one, that he would only miss the one, and then they would have the extended. But I don't know for sure on that. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I would think he'll probably play in this one. He was very upset with himself that he missed a game earlier in the season for, I don't think, a very serious. It was bad enough. I think they made him sit out, but he's a pretty prideful guy. I would think he'll be back. But if he's not back, they've still been able to run the ball okay in there. Dan Skipper's been a nice little, backup guy. And then the Sewell is just,
he's so good.
He's a freak. He's one of the best players in the game. And that's, that 4th down, they went for it to win the game against Green Bay. That everybody's like, what are you doing? It was just a outside zone right behind Panay. That's all it was, which is smartest thing to do. Put the ball right behind your best player. And when in doubt, that's what they do. Him and Frank Ragnow. And it works more than it doesn't.
Yeah, actually, I heard Dan Orlovsky on Bills Live today talking about that side of the line, and he was like, the other side of the line's really good, like top notch.
Yeah,
that right side of the line, championship caliber.
Absolutely,
and it is totally
Next
true.
Level.
It's almost like you can just throw a punch with that right at any point.
Remember when Kevin Zeitler's back was supposed to go out 6 years ago?
100. Yeah, right. Exactly. It hasn't.
Nobody knows anything. Nobody knows anything. Another question here on these running backs. Obviously, it's all the talk of the NFL, and it's such a. I love it because the NFL is so cyclical, right? It went so spread for so long, and now you're seeing teams really come back to punch these smaller defenses like the Buffalo Bills have. When you have nickel out there and you have a powerful line, you can punch them with a running back combo. But you guys have 2 starting running backs, legitimately, and people mocked and laughed at the Detroit Lions for taking Gibbs in that draft. And how funny is that now? So you guys get to laugh about that, but then you also get to laugh about a rival basically swapping Swift with Montgomery.
And that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Oh my God. And Swift, my brother's a Bears fan, and he's so mad that this happened because he loved Monty. He didn't want to see him go. And people thought it was like a fair swap for those running backs, and it's not at all. Getting Montgomery to pair with Gibbs is, again, we talked about the safeties, just a total cheat code. Go ahead and talk about those running backs.
The biggest baller move of the Holmes era, the trade for Goff and all that and the draft picks is what set him up. But that right there, the swap that they did and the maneuvering of moving away from DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams to the next year having Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery was something that, like you said, everybody mocked and was like, what are they doing? They think that they're the smartest guys
good
in the
already.
room.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
Swift
money
is
in the draft capital
right.
was, hey, what are you guys doing?
Right. There's no way that Gibbs is going to be better than Swift was the biggest thing for a long time. And you're like, are you kidding me right now? Like, that's day one, he'll be better, but whatever. And then the other one was everybody in Detroit loved Jamal Williams so much. And he kind of played himself out of there with some contract situations, but they moved on from him and pounced on Montgomery and never looked back. And it was
admittedly
perfect.
a lovable guy.
And I love Jamal. They all love
guy.
Jamal.
Yeah.
I've actually wondered if, like, whenever that deal falls apart, if he'll end up back here in Detroit somewhere. But it worked out. It was still one of those things that proved that, hey, we're willing to upgrade even from a guy that the fans loved and the locker room loved, and because it was a better player at a better time and situation. And it happened to be a guy like Montgomery, who's a perfect culture fit here, who's taken Gibbs under his wing. People talk about that all the time on those. I mean, it's so true too. Like, I'm not sure how many guys, and this has been more of a style in the NFL these days, the 1A and 1B, but I don't know how many older guys would take a younger guy like this and be like, bro, you have it, and I'm just here to help. And Montgomery's been a Pro Bowler himself, but like his attitude with Gibbs has been really special. That's been a secret for them as well.
Man, 22 touchdowns, like with a
yeah.
backfield, like that's crazy. Everybody's got to be happy when you're putting up double-digit touchdowns each. So I don't know how anyone could be mad. My last point on this offense is it's really actually something that for the Bills and Bills fans, I think is something that I'm keeping an eye on, and it's Sam Laporta. And I know that there's been some conversation that like I don't want to say sophomore slump, but obviously his success in year one was so crazy and such an outlier for tight end success that he was almost never going to live up to that, right, in year two. But obviously we have our own in Dalton Kincaid who hasn't quite hit, and there was a lot of comparisons, and obviously with that draft class, Bills fans are itching for something like we saw from Laporta in year one, and we haven't gotten it yet. Now he's hurt and hoping to come back and get there. What have you seen out of Sam Laporta in year two, and just kind of even that tight end position and how it develops? And was his year one unfair to every tight end that comes out early?
Yes, and it was unfair to him. It was unfair to everybody because it was just time. It was circumstance, right? I feel like he was the guy that got forgotten about in that offense and ended up getting a lot of free, easy stuff. Also, like he was the guy that benefited from not having Jameson Williams. That was the biggest number one thing. And even when Jameson Williams got back and got into the fold, Goff did not trust Jameson really until pretty much this year. And so this is the first year that Goff has been in Detroit that he just doesn't care who's out there. He'll throw it to anybody. Like he's got full confidence in everything. And
what was that stat the other day of like
spreading it around? It's something wild like that. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, it was like 5 touchdowns to 5 different guys.
6 receivers catching 5+ passes.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
It took me reading it like 3 times to be, wait,
man alive.
30 completions is crazy for an NFL
in any game,
period.
Right.
But to have it be distributed, I don't think anybody had more than 6. I think like 2 or 3 guys
all
had
evened
6,
out. Yep,
and 2 or 3 guys had 5, and it's insane that 6 different guys caught 5 passes.
And that's been the thing, right? Where it's been, and it's just been this interchangeable deal where it used to be with Johnson, where you could tell when they would run certain shots or they would package certain things, it would always be with the same personnel. They'd have to take guys, this guy can't do that. This guy has to do this. And people talk about this a lot where Gibbs and Montgomery are interchangeable, but now it's really the whole group. It doesn't matter. They will rotate guys in and out, some of the backup receivers, and they'll still run the same, shot or whatever it ends up being, just with somebody else different. And that has hurt Laporta. A couple teams early in the season, I think, did some things to try to take him away when they wanted to go to him. What was it, like National Tight End Day was actually ironically one of the days where they really wanted to go to him, and I think whoever they're playing that day did a good job taking him away. Teams have done a nice job with him, but he's also kind of snuck in there a few times this year and been forgotten about and made some really huge plays and huge catches, including last week against Green Bay. So he's hanging in there. He's a really good kid. Like that's the biggest thing I love about him is he hasn't complained or said a word.
Yep.
Yeah, now you just have the luxury of the best rookie season tight end in history is like your 5th passing option now because Tim Patrick now exists. For no reason.
And that's another one. Yeah, Tim Patrick's been amazing.
It's crazy. Yeah. All right, Nick, we've struck enough fear into the hearts of Bills fans. We're going to put you on the spot here. Help us out. Right. Our friends over at BetUS have this as a 1-point spread. I've seen it as high as 2.5.
I saw 2.5. Yeah.
So I think it's in that area. I think consistently
that's a coin flip, like right?
It's going to stay under 3. I don't think they're going to want to give either of these teams 3 points and get a full field goal. I joked early on, bet the over. They have it at 54. I've seen 54.5. what do you expect to see on Sunday? Give us a score prediction. Let us know what you think is going to happen.
I think this can be a high-scoring game. I'm not sure if we'll see what the Bills had last week in the 40s, but this to me feels like a high 30s.
86 is a little much.
It's a lot.
86 is a
lot
lot.
of
I don't know if we'll
much.
see that. Yeah, I don't know if we'll see
86
that.
is a little much.
Because I do think both these teams will try to run the ball a bit more in this one. And so I think it'll be, but I still think it'll be a little bit like what we saw with Lions-Packers last week. Maybe like 38-35. I'll go Lions 38-35 with the home team there. But I think that's what it'll be. It'll be like whoever has it last and whoever doesn't, screw up enough times in the red zone.
If there's a turnover, is there a turnover
like
who can get 7 instead of 3?
Because to me, like when we talk about who the best team in the league is right now, I think obviously Detroit is playing better than anybody in the league. But Buffalo, I know they're just coming off a loss, but when I look at this, they're right in that group of 3 or 4. So this is one I know the Lions are like. Green Bay was huge for divisional reasons, everything else, but this was the one that I've sort of circled for. I haven't gone to a game in a couple of weeks, but I'm going to this one because it was like this. I want to see how they respond here because like getting beat up, putting a ton into the last couple games, and then now having to come back with a huge opponent here that's certainly a playoff caliber team. So yeah, going to be a good one.
And real quick here before we let you go too, like you would think a 12-1 team wouldn't have a ton to be playing for, but you're still only 1 game up on
Minnesota.
Is
right there, man.
Crazy.
Minnesota, the
Eagles,
Eagles,
and Philly. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The 1 seed is still like obviously you control your own destiny, but it's not.
No,
you don't
it's
have
not
any cushion.
easy.
There's no cushion.
No.
So, and a quick aside for any Bills fan who's listening here who hasn't made it out to Ford Field, one of my favorite experiences in the league, like the whole setup with the sports district that they've created there, good restaurants. It's a really cool setup. It's not too bad to get in and out of, and an awesome viewing experience. Really, really cool to be there. Although, for Nick's purposes, not the best press box.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean,
you just need binoculars.
It can be terrifying if you're afraid of heights because it does one of those drop off.
Yeah, the visiting ones. It's in you're up in a.
It can be terrifying, but it takes a little bit getting used to for sure. Yeah.
So for everybody listening here, if you like Nick's pick here, 38-35 Lions, you can use our promo code YouTube150. Get 150% deposit bonus on your first deposit, up to 125% on your second and third, and get yourself up to $2,000 in deposit match. Again, use promo code YouTube150 with our friends over here at BetUS. All right, Nick. So first of all, let's hope both teams stay healthy this week. Get some guys back. I would love if we have a reason to have you on again to be able to talk about a rematch.
You get to win this one, and then we'll win the Super Bowl.
Lions Bills would be perfect Super Bowl. I would love it.
I've been trying to sell my Lions friends that like, hey, you guys have never made it to a Super Bowl. So that's already like a huge achievement and win. We've been there. So like, you guys get there, this one, and that's a win. And then we win the Super Bowl, and then you guys have it the next time. They didn't take it quite as well. But let the folks know what you have coming up next at The Athletic.
We got a lot of NFL draft content, a lot of Lions content as well. Coming up here, I actually had a mini mock go up, I think either maybe today or tomorrow. And then also, Welcome to Detroit, our podcast that I do with Colton Pouncey over on Patreon. Just find me on Twitter at Nick Baumgardner and find all that stuff there.
Awesome. Thank you. It was fantastic tonight. Really appreciate having me on. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, man.
All right. So again, it really is fun. Like, it's awesome to be in a position where there's games like this, and that this is the game of the back-to-back game of the week. Everybody's like three or four in a row for us with, that Chiefs game, and that what was supposed to be the Niners game kind of came back a little bit, but still was Sunday Night Football and a
fun game of the weather.
And that 425 marquee matchup where everybody's watching back-to-back weeks here. Like, we are the team that's like one of the most entertaining teams to watch. I wish like some of those crazy all-time entertainment ones would be our games. I would like to win some of those.
Mm-hmm. We had the Patriots one, the perfect game.
That was a great one. That's a great call.
Oh.
All right. Before we give our score prediction, I think our guys over at William Mattar Law Offices, we want to help pump the brakes a little bit here. And I'm going to start out with a criticism because I always want to challenge myself when I know, we get accused of defending. I think I had a couple people literally accuse us of like working for the Bills, or that we get paid by the Bills.
I saw that. Yeah.
Which is interesting. That's an interesting take. We've been sued by the Bills. More accurate. But I did try to say, like, hey, I don't want to only defend what's going on. I was critical of some of the decision making. I actually was appreciative of Sean McDermott coming out in the day after and saying that, yeah, in hindsight, we're going to take some of those decisions out. And they're going to consider, even though that is their best play, consider passing the ball, and that they are going to strategically change their idea. They would not have taken the timeout afterwards, and they would have tried to scramble back to the line of scrimmage. Those were at least things that, again, low probability, not great circumstances. I was appreciative of that. Like, hey, all right, that's what good teams do. You learn from situations. You try not to let it happen again. The one that was a little bit interesting is that we've seen him be he's always going to give coach speak. He's always going to give cliches, but as pointed as he's gotten has been the couple times where some players have really struggled, and he's used language like, this is a results-based business. They understand this. They understand that they would tell you themselves that they want to be better, and that they would want to be better than what they've showed on the field. He did it with Tyler Bass. He's done it with other players in the past. I would have liked to have heard that language in his answer about Matthew Smiley. I understand, like, a lot of people went to what do you expect him to say? And I get it. I don't expect him to say that, oh, it wasn't good enough, he's a bum, we're going to fire him tomorrow. Look, of course, that's not what he's going to say. I would have liked to have seen the same comfort level being critical of a player publicly with that carefully chosen language. Again, not calling a guy a bum, not saying he's trash, but saying that this is a results-based business, and he understands that, and he would tell you himself that he wants to be better than putting 9 guys on the field on a critical play, or not having a counter to having a punt block for a touchdown in a 2-point loss. I would have liked to have seen a little more accountability in his language, and I think that it was called for.
In that one, I'd have to listen back. I didn't listen to that specifically in a lot of detail. I was actually installing a sink during that press conference. I was a little distracted. But it did sound to me, though, like he was pretty direct and like, we had a talk. Like, he knows, almost like when I talk with, like, my wife comes home from work and I'm like, oh, the kid did this, but we talked about it. Like, it was definitely talked about.
He's aware that he did wrong.
Correct. And that was the vibe I got. I've always maintained I don't need the public accountability from sports teams as long as I feel that the accountability is being had. I don't know that it will be in this position. I think Sean McDermott's in a weird spot of I think a lot of people would be happy to move on from Matthew Smiley right now.
It is
right now,
really tough one to do in season. Really
tough one in
that
season.
Specific one where he's plucking from different position groups all the time. That's a really hard spot to make a change in season. Even if my gut wants that to happen, I do understand that is not an easy change to make in season.
Yeah, for sure. And and even if he does it in the offseason, you're gonna have 20-30% of people saying he's just scapegoating another assistant. And even though assistants get fired and move on all the time in the league, that will be a narrative about Sean McDermott. Whether or not he moves on from him or not, there'll be some narrative that fans won't be happy with. But to the press conferences and the answers and stuff. So when we went live post-game show, I didn't have a chance, obviously, to hear the pressers. We just saw people chatting about what was being said. And I thought the way that maybe some people were taking it versus what I actually heard when I went back and listened to it felt a little different. I actually thought he was quite open in the moment of like, hey, whether it's right or wrong, this is what our process led us to, right? Like, these were the analytics. We went with a high success rate play that we believe is a high success rate play. And really, in watching it back, it was inches away from success. Like, and the cliche, it's a game of inches, really spoke to me in watching that play, unfortunately. And a lot of different things could have happened where we didn't have that later conversation. But then for the next day, for him to come out and say, hey, we had honest conversations about all of this. And I believe that. I truly do. I've defended McDermott. Here's my kind of stance on McDermott, because I think it gets muddied of people calling me a McDermott bootlicker or whatever phrase you want to call that. Like, I'm glazing him. I don't even know what glazing means.
I'm not sure what that means. I'm not old enough to know that. I'm too old to know what that means.
Not hip enough. My kids probably aren't old enough yet for that term. But it's not that. It's like, I don't know if Sean McDermott is the coach that's going to get the Buffalo Bills organization over the top and lead them to a Lombardi. I'm not sure. I don't have that kind of faith. I also have questions about him in certain situations and in those games. I don't know if he'll be able to overcome those things. But what I do know is that he's one of the best coaches in the NFL, and it's not all Josh Allen. It's a lot Josh Allen.
Yeah.
But for Belichick, it was a lot Tom Brady. For every good, like,
guess what Andy Reid wasn't until he got Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, even like Sean McVay, like they got to a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. We didn't win a Super Bowl until he got Matthew Stafford. Like there's a connection with great coaches and great quarterbacks. You need the two things really to line up. And I don't know if he's great, but I know that he's really good. And he's up there with the guys like Kyle Shanahan, who also tightens up in close fourth quarter games. Even Sean McVay, I would encourage people to go look at that Super Bowl, man. He tried to lose that for his players. And luckily they got a ghost PI call and a couple other things went their way where they ended up winning the Super Bowl. But a lot of these
that Saints team probably should have been in the Super Bowl and probably winning it.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's luck. A lot of it is not tripping over yourself in moments, but sometimes guys do and they still find success. And all he has to do is win one and all the narratives are gone and he can continue on doing the things he does and winning 12 to 13 games a season and winning your division consistently. And so it comes off as like, oh, he's a bootlicker, when it's really, I'm just trying to frame the reality that this is a very good coach. Probably the best we've ever had. And I know Marv Levy got to Super Bowls. I think Sean McDermott's probably even a better coach than Marv Levy. And my hesitance to put him on a hot seat or fire him is that change isn't always a positive, even though we're frustrated in the moment. So the fire McDermott crowd, I still don't see it. I still don't think it's there. And that's where I'm pumping the brakes is like, what's the answer? Like we just talked it. Everybody wants to hire the hot offensive coordinator name. And I know you and I have debated that like maybe it is right to pair Josh Allen
there's
up
stability
with,
that
correct, the stability of not having to change offenses. I get the logic. A lot of these guys fail. And I don't know that Ben Johnson's going to go off and be a good head coach. I love him as an offensive coordinator. He's a great coach.
But you don't know how good of a head coach he's going to be. That does not translate. How is Mike McDaniel is as creative of an offensive mind as anyone in the NFL. How's he doing as a head coach? Josh McDaniel was an awesome offensive coordinator. Cliff Kingsbury is, again, a fantastic offensive coordinator and play caller. They were terrible head coaches. Like, that is just not the correlation. Now, I will say, sometimes you do get a Kevin O'Connell. He looks like a pretty darn good coach. Sometimes you do get a Matt LaFleur. Like, there are guys, but those guys are really great coaches because they're great leaders, not because they're offensive masterminds. It's because LaFleur's had
mistakes. Like, that's the other thing is all these coaching in the NFL is not.
LaFleur's got owned by Kyle Shanahan every single time they play in the playoffs.
Yeah. And I think you said it, like, we demand perfection out of these guys.
Yes.
And like the only person that I've ever seen play perfect is Josh Allen and operate a perfect football game is Josh Allen. Everyone else, even the best players that we like, Greg Rousseau was silent the other day. I love Greg Rousseau, but he's had bad games.
Awesome.
Like, people have
wasn't enough.
days that aren't their days. And so we criticize these guys, I think, more than we should. And we demand perfect out of them when we zoom out a little bit, even Andy Reid's still making mistakes and he just has players overcome it.
Yeah, and I think that blind faith goes both directions. It's not healthy either way. Like, no one should feel unbelievably 100% confident that Sean McDermott is going to lead us to a Super Bowl.
Nope.
He might not. Like, he might not be the guy. He could be. I don't think that he's the Marty Schottenheimer that people bring up. I don't think that he's the Marvin Lewis that he brings up. But it would be naive of me to say that it's not possible. Yeah, it is possible that he's just a program builder and not the finisher. He is inarguably a program builder. He is inarguably the guy you want to come in and clean up your franchise and to create the infrastructure for success. That is inarguable. That he is exceptional, and that not only capable but exceptional. That he took the team that had the longest playoff drought in professional sports and turned it into 7 of 8 years, 5 straight, blah, 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 all the other things that he's had, the accolades, the winningest in franchise history over a Hall of Famer like Marv Levy. However, the same need to not allow for extreme absolute language goes the other way as well. The people who are sure that he can never lead us to a championship and this team can't win while he is the head coach, that's not correct either. This team absolutely can win a championship. This team absolutely can win a championship, not despite him, not alongside or avoiding or overcoming him, they can win a Super Bowl along with him and because of him. Of course, it will be more of Josh Allen than of any other individual person, but he will have a reason and a contributing factor of them winning a Super Bowl. That is absolutely in the range of possible outcomes. So obviously, there's only one way to find out. There are 31 teams don't win the Super Bowl every year. The best team in the league doesn't win the Super Bowl. Honestly, most seasons, the best team doesn't win. It's the team that got hot at the right time, the team that stayed healthy at the right time. A lot of those teams we rattled off of, some of the best teams, of all time, haven't won Super Bowls. They need to have a lot of things break their way with health and luck and all kinds of other things, with their bad luck and bad health for opponents and things like that. All those things have to happen. However, the idea that people know that it can't happen, because we have seen them bungle some late game situations. We have seen them mess up time management. We have seen them have bad results from 50-50 decisions, and some where they didn't make the decision that gave us the best chance to win, and it also didn't work out. We've seen all of those things happen. Those are reasons to be frustrated with that situation. Those are not disqualifying factors of why he can never be the head coach of a Super Bowl winning team. It just isn't.
We're a couple weeks away from him going for it on a 4th and 2 to have not a walk-off, but a game-winning touchdown by Josh Allen, putting the ball in his hand. So that's another thing I argued with our friend Nate Geary. These ones hurt.
Those ones are hard to remember in those moments.
Correct.
Those great game-ending, really well-handled, gutsy, perfectly executed strategy wins are hard to remember in the emotional response to the painful losses.
Yeah. Even putting Tyler Bass out, who was struggling for a 50-something yard field goal to win, was gutsy. He could have gotten killed for something like that if it doesn't go the right way. And so I think there's more of those than there are the failures, but the failures feel so much worse. And when they happen, because they've happened in the past, it drums up everything in your stomach that you just don't want to feel again. And so I get the emotion. I get the feeling. I just think, my last point on this is I have bad news for the people that want to fire him. Unfortunately, the worse for you, the worse the Sabres continue to be, the harder it is going to be for Terry Pegula to disrupt any of the success that he's having right now with the Buffalo Bills.
The more money that Sean McDermott's program continues to make for Terry Pegula, he has zero interest in that changing. The fact that we are the marquee entertainment team in the NFL that everyone wants to watch and shatters viewership and ratings records, none of that.
It would require Josh being like, we have to do something different.
Correct. He is the only person who can change that factor, which again, I don't know. If you ask certain radio show hosts, I think there's some people who think that they don't even look at each other on the sideline and don't have good relationships. So
just when they do snow angels,
only when they do snow angels. So again, I think that's a very healthy pump the brakes. Our guys over at William Mattar Law Offices are fantastic partners. We love working with them. And that again, it is perfectly fine to have frustration to be upset and to be critical of them not making the right decisions. I directly, even to a greater degree than you or Eric or others, I thought they made the wrong decisions. I also don't want to fire him. That is just an insane leap of where it is. And the people who are certain because they've been hurt, they're talking out of the defensive insecurity of the fact that they've been hurt emotionally in those games, that they now want to have him removed because they think that means they won't get hurt anymore by the next coach. I get bad news. Yeah. Every single coach has frustrating moments, and it's just not going to go away.
And I'm worried too. I'm worried that it will rear its head again, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to have those conversations. So, good talk.
All right. I don't know if it was good talk, but it was a talk. All right. Let's put ourselves back on the spot here. It is your turn.
It is my turn
here. Mm-hmm. Give us a prediction of what you expect to see this week. Bills lines.
Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like it one bit. Coming off the way that they lost that game, it was a draining game. It was a long trip out west to go out and have to put it all out there and play a game like they did. It was a physical matchup. as the week went on, I didn't love the way the Bills defense matched up against the Rams offense. And starting out this week, I don't like the way the Bills match up against this Detroit offense. And this isn't to say, this is something we talked about a little bit offline, Greg. This isn't to say, I still think that the Bills, in comparison to their peers, all the data, the film, it all tells me the Bills have a good defense. I think objectively a top 10 defense. It might take a bump this week playing against the best offense in football. Like, nobody is really slowing down. Like he said, Tampa Bay did it a little bit. Green Bay tackled pretty well. They still got 30 dropped on them. Like, this team is a wagon, as the kids like to say, and they are doing this kind of stuff to everyone. So I think even if the Bills put out a pretty good defensive performance, they're going to get scored on. They're going to get run on. They're going to get passed on. Goff spreading the ball in the way he is. I just think it's too much to overcome. And the defense is still the weakness when you have Josh Allen on the other side. So it's the weaker unit. And it doesn't make me feel good. I actually think this is a kind of a pivotal moment and a narrative spinning moment in the media where the Bills drop 2 games in a row against good teams. Luckily, not super meaningful. They're NFC games. I think the 1 seed's probably already out of reach anyway. I think you're just trying to stave off the Steelers for the 2 seed going forward here into the season. But I have this one going 34-27. Actually, in favor of the Lions. I think it's a bit of a shootout. I think that maybe they're able to generate a turnover with those safeties and steal a possession, and where the Bills aren't able to go shot for shot necessarily with them and are trying to play from behind again a little bit, but just cannot stop the Lions from leaking out. They might be able to stop them and hold them to a couple field goals, but I don't think they're going to stop them from moving down the field and getting into range. This team has DVOA. They are like top in everything, Greg. They are
all the things.
4th overall offense, 3rd overall defense. On defense, they're 1st against the pass, 6th against the run. On offense, they're 2nd in the run, but they're also 1st in special teams. Like, this is just a solid team overall. They're not going to make mistakes. They're not going to give you a lot of opportunities. You got to pretty much play flawless and physical against them. And I just don't think the Bills got it right now. And I don't love the narratives that are going to come from this of like 2 losses against good teams and people, but then we're going to go rattle off wins against some bad teams heading into the playoffs. People aren't going to feel confident they can beat good teams.
Okay. I think it's going to be a fair question. I think the Bills offense matches up just fine with this defense. I think that they'll be okay. I think that, again, especially with them being shorthanded, the Bills are going to score points, but I don't know how we stop this Lions offense. I just don't. Like, I think that they're going to run on us. I think that they're going to be in a spot where it's going to give some really frustrated. Those run drives are so just disheartening to watch when you have them chunking off 6, 8, 12, 7, 8, 9.
And then when you think you're going to stop, they just go for it on 4th.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And when Nick was on, we talked about it. This team runs on 3rd and medium, 3rd and long more than any team I've ever seen.
Because they know they're going for it.
If you give them a light box on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, they'll run, and half the time they'll convert or just run it to get it to 4th and 2. And they're like, yeah, sorry, we'll get the 4th and 2. It's fine. And they'll run it on 4th and 2. So with what this defense has done, I am very concerned with that. I'm curious of what different wrinkles we could see Bobby Babbage try to throw at this. I think that it's a good test. It's different than the Ravens run offense, but it's a good test of like, hey, what are you going to do if you have to face that Ravens run offense in the playoffs with what teams have done to us? We need to be prepared. What is our wrinkle? What is our approach? How are we going to come out of the too high? Are we going to come out of the nickel? Are we going to come out are we going to make adjustments in gap integrity and how we approach what these things are? They have to have an answer. This is going to be a good test for it. I'm in the same boat. I actually, very sadly, I think that maybe this could come down to one of those Tyler Bass rearing his ugly head again. I've got it 34-31, and that, maybe missing a tying field goal at the end that would give us a shot to be back in it. I do agree. I think that it's going to be overreacted to. I think that it's there. The Bills are fully capable of beating them, just like we were capable of beating the Rams. Our offense scored more points than the Rams offense, but we lost the game. I don't want that to be the reason, but like you said, they're awesome on special teams, so I don't feel great about that in this one. No. And if, I think that we need to win the turnover battle in order to win this game. And I'll even take that further. If we win the turnover battle, I think we'll win this game. Yeah. I think that this is both offenses are good enough that whoever gets the more possessions will win because they'll have more opportunities, and both teams are going to convert plenty of opportunities. But I think we have to win the turnover differential to beat this team because their offense is just so tough. We're going to be lucky to get more than a couple stops here. Holding to a field goal will be huge wins. Any sacks, getting home on pressures would be huge in this game. We have to find a way for that. I'm tired of seeing blitz pickups, getting the job done over and over again. We got to find a way to be able to do some of those things to have a chance here. And I also don't think that losing it will be the death knell that some will want it to be. I still think we'll beat New England, the Jets in New England, to finish out the season. So even if they lose here, I still think 13-4 is very much in play. I
still think you could probably even rest
is
starters.
Easily the 2 seed, probably the 2 seed with a rest in week 18. Yeah. And honestly, we talked about it. The 2 seed isn't a terrible one because the number 1 seed automatically plays the lowest seed. So if the Ravens win that opening round game, Baltimore goes to Kansas City and we would play Houston or Los Angeles. So if we get a home game against Denver and then a home game against Houston or Los Angeles, I'll take that path as a 2 seed, especially if we get to rest some guys in week 18. I think that there's a lot more silver linings out there than what people are worried about with losing the 1 seed. And again, the 1 seed's not done. There's still possibilities here. But I do think that we need to beat Detroit to get the 1 seed.
Yeah.
I think we need to run the table. I think Kansas City might lose 2 games. They're not going to lose 3 down the stretch.
Probably not. Yeah.
So we'll see where this goes. Any final thoughts for the people before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, just hopefully it's an enjoyable game. Hopefully it isn't the Bills fumbling all over themselves in critical moments, and we get another enjoyable game in a national spotlight. This is great period of time to be a Bills fan. I just want to leave fans with this, like why I'm so optimistic, why I see the glass half full so much. I'd say it all the time. My brother's a Bears fan. I had a phone call with him today, and like the things he's complaining about, I have no recollection of what that, like I had to drift back into my memory to remember what it's like. Like we have the best quarterback in the world, maybe ever, to play the game of football is our quarterback, and he loves it here and he wants to be here. We have a team full of weapons. Like I'm raving about Khalil Shakir. I'm talking about this offensive line. Like
Amari Cooper started to look pretty nice.
Amari Cooper's looking really nice. Things are coming together. The team's getting healthy. That's really more than a win. I care about remaining healthy here for the next month and a half as they get into the playoffs. I think that's a bigger key to their ability to go on a run, no matter where the seeding ends up, no matter what things end up, is get healthy. Matt Milano needs to get his legs underneath him. Some of these guys coming back like a Kincaid and a Coleman, I want to see them get involved and get some reps as they head into the playoffs. This is really a ramp up, and I think they're going to win enough games to have a nice, comfortable, get that 2 seed. But nothing is as important to me as the health and staying healthy going into the playoffs.
Really well said. I think it's exactly what the focus needs to be. We are going to be here for you all the way through that stretch. Make sure you're checking out all the good things across the board at Cover One. The great job with the film room, air raid hour, under review, roundup, all the guys on all the shows, the Skies coverage, everything that we do. Make sure you're checking them all out. Make sure you follow Aaron and I. We're also trying to dig in a little bit more on Facebook, so come over and hang out with us over there on our Facebook group. We've had a whole ton of people join recently and chiming in and talking with us. That's been a lot of fun to be able to do. And of course, you come support us with one pass to be able to go through and help out with our Discord channel and to join in everything there. So make sure you're checking everything out that we have here. Our sponsors at William Mattar Law Offices have been awesome partners, and our friends over at BetUS want you to gamble responsibly. But on behalf of everyone here at Cover One, our fantastic producer Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are